Morning.
Good morning.
It is absolutely right. It's morning.
Well, it does make you wonder what time it is for those who are watching.
It's absolutely. Well, actually, yesterday, as I was popping over the office between the 8 o'clock and 9:30 services in Beaminster, and as I came down the slope out of the church, a lady was coming up Marywell Street, and she said, "Oh, hello, I'm just going to watch you now." I said, "Oh, that's good. That must be worry you to death." But no, she was going to watch. I was on a Sunday morning. Now, whether she was going to watch the service or whether she was watching Rev Chat, I should never know because I didn't ask her. But there we are. People watch it all kinds of times.
They do. I wonder if anyone listens to us like a podcast while they're running.
And the next question is...
One of the podcasts I listen to regularly, which is called Fortunately, with Fee Glover and Jane Garvey. It's very funny. They often have discussion about where their listeners listen. And they have a lot of people who listen to them whilst they're running.
Oh.
But maybe we're more of a tea and cake kind of occasion.
Possibly.
Sounds like a request to let us know where you are when you listen. What you're doing.
You should. Yes, that's great. Put it in the comments. Where are you? And do you watch us or do you listen? Because I guess we're on YouTube, but you could listen to YouTube. You don't have to watch the pictures, do you? That's not very interesting watching us.
No.
Unless we're dancing.
Could be. Perhaps in the bath, they could be listening to us. I saw a programme, I can't remember what it was yesterday, or only part of it, must have been a comedy of some sort, and a man was being, a man had, oh yes, it was Poirot or something, I think, was on, and he'd hired a room. No, I'll start again. It wasn't Poirot. It was Goodbye Mr. Chips with Martin Clunes. Now, that's my favourite film, Goodbye Mr. Chips, the original with Robert Donut. But Martin Clunes had remade it. And he hired a room in a hotel, and the man gave him the keys and said, "Don't smoke your pipe in the bath." Perhaps that's the kind of instruction I'd listening to our podcast in case you drift off to sleep.
I have to say, I think anyone who uses a phone, a Kindle or a tablet in the bath is a braver person than I am.
Yes.
I wouldn't dare, because I'm a clumsy so-and-so, and I just know it would end up in the bath.
In the bath. Not good. There we are. Anyway, I think we're going to hear from John's Gospel, are we today, Chris?
We are.
So we need to have a pause, is that right?
Oh, the pause. The famous pause.
Read on, old chap.
Read on, old chap. We're reading from John chapter 15, starting at verse 9. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. I am giving you these commandments, so that you may love one another.
Well, I just think verse 12 is what we should do, and that's the end.
Thank you. You can watch us on...
Love one another as I have loved you. There we are. That's all you need to do.
If only it was that easy, Joe.
I know. If you think about all the things that is just going appallingly wrong in the world at the moment, and the heart of it is, a lot of it is inequality and hatred and power struggles and money and John Lewis sofas and, you know, all kinds of things. And if we just had a better love for each other, that's a massively naive view. I like to cling on to it.
What happened to John Lewis's sofa? Did he sit on it and break it?
Oh no, it wasn't. You know, wasn't approved of in the. Anyway, let's not mention.
Oh,
we deliberately mentioned the Prime Minister's apartment.
Yeah, well, that's okay. As long as he paid for it, he's okay. But that's why yesterday I started, because it was bank holiday yesterday, Chris. I don't know if you picked up on my thing last night, but I decided to use the day as a kind of reading day because I knew the weather was going to be bad. And I started reading Justin Welby's Reimagining Britain, which I read the first time, but he's added a lot more to it, particularly about exactly what you're saying, Joe. And I think, you know, it for me, it just struck an accord really with this and what you're saying about so much wrong in the world. And what Justin Welby's thesis really is, and he expands on it from the first book, is that how can faith groups, because he looks at it from a faith group point of view, as opposed to just purely Christian, but how are faith groups going to help to change the world by their belief in a God that loves and in fact instructs us, as we've heard, to love and to share and to care for each other. There we are. Read the book. That's perhaps all you need to do. It builds on that other book he wrote for the Lent group, which was called Dethroning Mammon, was it?
Yeah,
which was very, very good at the time. But love, I mean, the original commandments were fairly direct, weren't they? You know, he gave them to Moses, he carried them down a hill, and you got to love everybody and love God, and don't steal, and don't kill your neighbour, and don't pinch your neighbour's ass or whatever. And do as your mum and dad tell you. They were all good. But he's just kind of made them even more simpler in these instructions, hasn't he? You know, love God, love you, and love your neighbour, really. And it's, as you say, it's very simple. But Chris, you seem to think it's not as easy as that.
I think it's quite easy to love those who love us. It gets a bit harder when people don't love us back. It gets a bit harder when people are abusing us. It gets a bit harder when people are taking advantage of us. It gets harder when people don't listen. And we've got to remember to love them as well.
And hard when we don't agree with them.
And hard when we don't agree with them.
Do you have to agree with somebody to love them? No, you don't. But it's a lot easier if you do.
I think it's interesting in social media, you know, when you're on Facebook or Instagram and you're surrounded by people who agree with you often, because you're kind of friends group. If you choose who you're friends with, then you tend to end up in a bit of an echo chamber. And you're pretty sure, you know, and I know that, like, on Facebook, sometimes I've had friends and I think they might have posted something that I consider, I don't know, racist or more politically in a certain direction than I would agree with. And you can just unfollow them, you see. You can just click a button and they don't even know, and you just don't have to see it anymore. But to actually love somebody who holds polar opposite views to you and believes that their views are right, because presumably you believe your views are right and they believe their views are right, I find it very hard to love them, because I can respect them as a human being, but if they're espousing views that are very, very, that clash with the ones I hold and potentially clash with the values I hold as a Christian as well, I find it hard to love them. And as Chris said, if you then chuck in a bit of personal oppression, or, you know, if you're being oppressed by the people who hold different views to you, then it's even harder, isn't it, to love them?
It is, and the love gets quite hard when you're doing things like you say, because I've had friends on my Facebook post, well, I would regard it as down and out fascist and racist stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it just shouldn't be there. And I don't really even want that appearing on my newsfeed because I disagree with it. And it's almost to the point of you can't engage discussion with them because they just say you're wrong. So the easy option is, like Joe says, to unfollow them. And I've got a few friends that I've done that to. But you still would love them as a person. You know, if they still phoned up and said, oh, my wife's ill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Their viewpoints make no difference whatsoever.
Isn't part of the challenge, which is, and it's a very difficult challenge, and we've all faced it at some point, whether in our ministry life or because all three of us have had lives before ministry, perhaps outside. Isn't the challenge of the Christian, though, to be prepared to stand up for what we believe is wrong and to have that discussion? And I don't say argument, because the argument will never win. And the only way you change people is by constantly chipping away in discussion at why you think they're wrong or they're saying things that are wrong. And unless we do that, somehow we've lost the argument before we even start. What would God do? It's that old saying, isn't it? You know, what would God do in this situation? Would he give in? Well, he may walk away and sit in a wilderness and have a few thoughts and moments, but I'm sure he'd go back and try and face up to the reality of what's got to be done. But it is very, very difficult, and I agree with you both, that, you know, when things are said that you find so offensive, particularly if it is a racist or a sexist comment or whatever it may be, it's very difficult to immediately be able to say, oh, I'm going to love you. It's something you have to work at, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess we haven't really got time to go into what actually loving another human being really means, I guess, because there's so many different forms of what that love would be. You love your husband or wife and your children in a different way to how you love your friends, and then you love your congregation in a different way to how you love a stranger that you've never met. And it's, it's, you know, sometimes love is being tough. You know, I think about being a parent and, you know, some of the things that you do and set boundaries for your children, and they can't bear it and they kick off and they think you're outrageous and so out of touch and la, la, la. But what you're trying to do as a parent is keep them safe, or, you know, help them grow or help them make right choices. Because love doesn't always mean, you know, you can do what you like, does it? So loving people, so if you are loving people, challenging them could be easily part of that love. But there's the whole element of peace and reconciliation that sits alongside it as well, isn't it?
There is. Absolutely. Yeah. And that.
I think one of the big challenges there, though, is knowing when to stop. You know, because we want the peace and the reconciliation. We want to be able to talk with people and love people. But at some point, you've got to decide that somebody's beyond hope.
Are they? What, beyond hope in what way?
Well, beyond hope of my capability rather than, because they're never beyond God's hope. I could see your expression then, Joe.
I know, I knew that's what you meant, but I just thought I'd reel it in a little.
And ultimately, we can only set our own, what we understand about what God's instruction or commandment is. And ultimately, you know, if we feel we're losing the battle ourselves, and there's no reason why we should win every battle, so to speak, using the words of the kind of understanding of Bunyan in Pilgrim's Progress, what we have to be able to do is say to God, we've done our bit. We leave it to you now because we're not in a position, but we're happy to come back, on the site. If you've done your work and we're needed again later, I don't know what else we can do.
No, but I guess we need to know, the verse says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And I guess as Christians, we've got to know that we are loved by God.
Yep.
And what that means for us in our lives. That means, understanding that we're forgiven and knowing what Jesus teaches and, having a relationship with God, not just believing what someone else has told us about God, but actually nurturing that relationship and knowing we're loved. Because it's in the root of that we find the grace and the love and the power of the Holy Spirit in order to love others. Mm-hmm. It's not just about our own efforts, because if it was, I don't know how good it would be.
I think it's very, very difficult to pontificate sometimes about loving others as a church until the church gets itself into its own gear and starts to love each other a bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're onto a bit of a loser sometimes when we're telling other people to love each other, when within the church we don't love this group or that group because they're different to us. It's back to any other conversation, and that's the very essence of the living, loving, discussions at the moment. And that's also, I think, where Justin Welby's going to go in the new bits of this book, because the foundation was laid in the first book, and now he's expanding because of Brexit and the pandemic and other world changes. So yeah, it's interesting.
I always think there's one lovely bit I read. It was in the Book of Common Prayer, Service of Holy Communion, and I'm sure you guys have said it thousands of times, and I'm sure, dear listener, you've heard it many times. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second commandment is this: love your neighbour as yourself. What we then often omit is the next sentence: on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Yep.
So the two commandments, which are love God, love your neighbour, I think we need to take as the basis of, well, I think that statement itself just underpins all our theology. Everything we do about how we love people is this rule helping to love somebody.
Mm-hmm. And if that was at the top of every PCC agenda and every meeting we ever had, what are we discussing today that will enact loving God and loving our neighbour?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would set the agenda, really, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? Maybe I'll do that in tomorrow's BCC.
Well, yes. We'll try it in a staff meeting we're about to have.
I'll try to the first of the APCMs tonight. That'll be interesting. And the second tomorrow, and the third on Thursday. See what happens.
I mean, it might be quite transformational.
It could be. Anyway, Fiona's ringing, I can see, because Fiona is panicking. We're not going to let her into the chapter, so she can wait. Let her in last, Joe. But it's been good to see you all, and thanks very much indeed for coming along. Joe, you can watch us on?
You can see us on BeaminsterTeamChurches.org on our website, or find us on social media at Beaminster Team Churches, or find us at the Eggardon and Colmers Facebook page or Eggardon and Colmers website. Is that about right?
That's about right, yeah.
Near enough. It's lovely to see you, and tell us where you listen to us, because we're longing to hear.
Particularly.
She's ringing me now.
God bless.
See you all. Bye.
Bye.